Hi, welcome to Living Hope. You know, here we really love Jesus, we love to worship and pray for one another, and we really love the Word of God. Now, all that is about to start, so we're glad that you're with us.
Okay, so my name is Michelle King. I've been going to this church for 13 years. I just went to Bethel School of Supernatural Ministry last fall, and it was a really good year. The thing that I was expecting to get out of the school was different than what I actually learned, which surprised me a lot. I thought I'd be learning more about supernatural signs and wonders, about praying for the sick and healing people and setting people free. But what I learned mostly was things I thought I had already learned, things like how much God loves me, how he expresses that love to me, and just things that were more internal than external. So I'm just going to share a lot of stories about that and about what I learned about God through the experiences that I had at school. So the best thing about BSSM was that it gave God lots of room to work. It was like being at church every single day for 9 months. So it was really good. So the first story that I'll share is, it was about a month into school, and we were in worship. Worship was my favorite time. The number one thing I like about BSSM, Bethel School of Supernatural Ministry, was that they had long worship sets every single day at school, and worship's my favorite part, so I really enjoyed it. There was a song called Pieces by Amanda Cook, and I had never heard the song before. I think you guys might have played it here before, I'm not sure. But it's a song all about God's love, and it describes God's love as like kind, and just lists all these wonderful things about God's love that you think you know, but when you have it in a song setting like that, and you also have God speaking to you at the same time in worship, then it just really hits you where you find out you didn't actually believe the fullness of God's love where it was before. So, in the song Pieces, there are some lyrics that just really stood out to me, and when I heard them, I realized that I had never believed them before. And those lyrics were, your love is proud to be seen with me. Like, I used to always be very shy, and I would never be up here today if I was the same. And just that God's love is proud to be seen with me. He's not degrading himself to be with me. He's not putting up with me or just being with me because that's who he is and that's what he has to do. He's actually proud to be seen with me, and he's proud to call me his daughter and to work through me and to show himself through who I am. And then another line was that his love hangs on every word that we say. My voice has been a big topic in my life. It's something that the devil has tried to shut down ever since I was a little girl, I guess. And I just over the last 5 years, I've been really growing in my voice and just knowing how valuable the words I say are. And it has really just opened up my world where I can be bold and I can actually speak to people and tell people the things that I hear God say in my secret place are actually valuable to people outside of myself. Like what God teaches me, I can impart to other people. And I didn't ever realize that before. I never thought about sharing like visions that I had or times with God where he would just speak to me. Like I thought that was for me, which it really is a lot for me. But everything that God gives us, he gives us as a tool to use for other people to be set free in the same way that we were set free. So that's just really good to know, and to not just know it, because a lot of the stuff at school, I knew it in my head. I had heard all this before. I've been at church forever. I was homeschooled. My mom taught me this in school. Like, it's nothing new, but just hearing it straight from God, it changes you. It changes your beliefs, what you believe in your heart. And when it changes you, you actually live it out. It's not just something that you believe in your head and you can repeat it. It's something that you experience and that you get to impart to other people. So that was one of the best days of school, and I was only in the first month. So it was really good. The next big breakthrough that I had was actually the day after that. So God doesn't space it out evenly so that, you get this much of his goodness every single month. He's not like that at all. He's like, I want to give you as much as you're willing to hold, and I want to give it to you all at once. So the day after that, I was in worship again. Most of my stories are in worship because that is my favorite place. And I saw an intern. They had revival group pastors, which were in charge of 60 students. And the revival group pastors had interns that were in their third year of this program, and they just work and help them out. So there was an intern, I could tell she was one because of her badge. She was just going around praying for people during the worship time. That was pretty normal, especially the first half of the school year. And I just saw her praying for students, like just for maybe a minute or two, lay her hands on them, and then move to another one. And I just knew that I wanted whatever she was giving to them. I had no idea what she was giving. I had no idea what she was praying. The music is way too loud over there, so I couldn't hear what she was saying. And she was just going along, praying for people, and I knew that I wanted what she had. It was just a spiritual knowing inside myself. So I asked God, I really wish you'd send her over here to pray for me. And usually I disqualified myself from asking God for other people to bless me because God blesses me so much personally. I feel like I don't need it as much as the person beside me, and I should just let them pray for other people. But I just knew that I wanted what she had, so I asked God. And she kept praying. She was in the row in front of me now, and she was just praying for the people in front of me, and I was worried I wouldn't get it. Like, she wouldn't come and pray for me. So I decided, well, I'll just do what I know is biblically true. And there's a story of the woman who touches the hem of Jesus' garment and just gets what Jesus is imparting. So I decided, I'm going to touch the hem of her jeans. She's right there. I can do it. So I just bent over, I touched the hem of her jeans, and I was like, yes, I have no idea what I just got, but it was good. And now I'm good. So if she doesn't pray for me, I got it anyways. So I left it at that and decided I should really stop just watching her and should actually worship God. So I decided to do that. And she kept going, and then she was at my roommate beside me, Amira, and she was praying for her. I was like, she's really close. God, are you gonna let her pray for me? I'll just not look. If I don't look, she won't. If I look at her, she won't pray for me. So I'll just close my eyes and I'll just wait. So that's what I did. And she came over, and she stepped onto the chair behind me, and she laid her hand on my shoulder, and I was like, God, you're so good. I have no idea what she's going to pray, but I've been wanting this, and I've been asking for this, and you just want to bless me. So she started to pray for me, and she didn't pray for 1 minute or 2 minutes. She prayed for me for 20 minutes, and she just gave me a hug, and I started crying, and there was snot everywhere. My mom told me, I was texting her later, she told me snot stories are the best ones. So I didn't actually hear everything that she prayed for me. The music was really loud, and I was just waiting there, listening to her. God was talking to me at the same time and having visions and everything. So it was all rolled into one. I don't remember most of what she said. But one thing that she said I'd never heard before, she was praying over me the mother heart of God. And God's a father, so I didn't know what she was talking about. But whatever she meant by it, I don't know. But as soon as she said the mother heart of God, it triggered a memory that I had. It was about a month before school. I was talking to my mom on the couch, and she was just telling me how amazing I was, going down the list and on and on and on. And it was so much that I was like, I thought in my head, Mom, it's too good to be true. You are totally biased, and that's just too much. And God told me, that's how I think of you. That's how I describe you. He loves us more than we give ourselves credit for. I wasn't going to cry, but I changed my mind and told God it's okay. As long as I can still talk, it's okay. So that was still a month into school, and I had 8 more months of this to go. So I knew it was going to be really good, but I just wasn't expecting the things that God taught me. I so knew God's love. That was one of the things I knew that. But he showed me that there's so much more of his love that he has for me that I acknowledge. I just want to encourage you that is what he thinks about when he looks at you. Like, he loves you a lot. And he has a long list. He keeps track of these things. He's like, you did that amazing thing on that day. You had that really good thought about that person. You never shared it with them, but you had that thought because that is inside of you. And he takes note of every good thing that we do, and he makes a huge list. And any time that you're willing to listen to him, he will just say thing after thing after thing that's good about you. Okay. Story number 3. This was at the ropes course. So this was about 3 or so months into school. And they had us go as students, as a revival group. So people that we kind of knew. They had us all go together to a ropes course up in Weaverville, which is about an hour away from Reading, where I was at school. And they had us do different trust exercises and communication and team building skills stuff. And the first exercise that they did was a trust exercise, which was just about being blindfolded. So that was my favorite exercise of the day, was the blindfold exercise. I was paired with Eva. She was in my small group, so group of 4 girls. So we got to know each other a lot more than, the 1,100 other students in school. And I was really happy to be put with her because we were going to be blindfolded and led on an obstacle course. And I trusted her, so that was good. And Eva was really sweet. We couldn't use words to communicate where the person was supposed to go. So we made up touching hand signals to direct each other. And Eva, she held my arm really close, and she kept me close beside her the entire time. And she was just, every time I would complete something that was more difficult, she would pat me on the arm and cuddle up to me and encourage me, you did really well. And so we went through the obstacle course, and because I couldn't see and there was nothing to hear, the emotional part of it was really ramped up. You could just feel all the emotion inside, trusting your partner and walking through the obstacle course. And so as we went, we were going down, it felt like steps. I don't even know what the obstacle course was to this day because I was blindfolded. But we were going down these steep steps, and I felt, because I could feel the emotional part of it, as soon as I felt a little bit of fear, I could feel it. And so I felt a little bit afraid, but Eva was right there beside me the whole time. And so I took that fear, and I imagined it was like a shawl around my shoulders. And so I took that fear, and somehow I just put it imaginarily onto Eva beside me, onto her shoulders, and it became my trust. So I put all of my trust onto Eva. And as soon as I did that, all the fear was gone. And I'd never experienced fear leaving before like that. It was completely gone. So at the end of the day, we had a big supper because we had completed a ropes course and the trust exercise and all sorts of other things. At the end of the day, they had an open mic at the end. And students were going up and sharing testimonies about where God spoke to them the most through the day or whatever they were doing. And I really wanted to share about the trust thing that I learned in the blindfolding exercise. And usually I don't like to speak in front of people, so the fact that I even wanted to was a good step for me. And then I decided, I was in the middle of a table, and there were chairs everywhere, and it would have taken me 2 whole minutes to get out of my spot and then up to the microphone. And there were people going constantly, so I knew I wouldn't get a shot to do it if I just sat there. So I kept arguing with myself as I'm half listening to what other people are saying. It's like, I really want to go, but I don't want to go. It's too scary. And I never get there in time, and I don't even have that much to share. And then God reminded me of the morning. The instructor of the ropes course had told us to ask God for what the theme was, what God wanted to teach us, like a one-word theme. And God actually gave me the word fearless. And I argued with God, because you can't be fearless. Like, there's always fear there. You could only, like, God, you should change the word to brave. If you change it to brave, that means, like, I'm bold, I'm doing it even though I'm afraid. But God said, no, it's fearless. He was quite insistent, so it's like, okay, you're God. So he reminded me of this, and that is exactly what I had learned while I was blindfolded, was that I just put all of my trust in the person leading me, and all the fear had actually left. I was actually fearless. So I was like, okay, now it's a full story. I should share this. So I positioned myself to speak. This very important step is not only being willing to share and having something to share, but positioning yourself where you're like, I'm going to do this, and even if I don't want to, I'm not going to back down, and I have to. So when I told my mom that I had a sermon to preach, I knew that she would tell Pastor Scott, and Pastor Scott would make me share, and because he would make me share, even if I was scared the day I was supposed to share, I would have to, because I just had to. So I positioned myself at ropes course to speak, and I moved out of my chair into his aisle spot, and I just sat there and waited for an open spot on the mic. And then as soon as it was open, even though I was afraid, I ran up there and I shared my little testimony about the blindfolding exercise and how I learned how to trust God. And then people were all happy because they were all happy the whole night, and they were a little bit drunk on the Holy Spirit. That's normal at school. And so I shared my testimony. I sat back down. I felt really good. It was over, and I didn't have to ever do that again. So I was about to leave with my ride at the end of the night, and then one of the interns in our revival group, Michelle Lewis, she came up to me, and she told me, Michelle, thank you so much for what you shared today on the microphone. What you have to say is important and valuable. And that was all she said. It was like 10 seconds. Like, what you have to say is important and valuable, and like people need to hear what you have to say. And because my voice was such a big topic throughout the whole year, that stayed with me, and it's still something I remember to this day. And that's what I think of when I have to speak, or even when it's just in a small setting, like just talking to a friend. It's like, I know what I have to say is valuable, and it's important, so I say it. It gives me motivation to speak. So I just want to encourage you with that when you say small things to people, it really does impact their life. Like, not everything you say is going to stick in everyone's mind, and you don't have to write a book about it. But the things that you say, even just the smallest things, are really important. Like, they change people's lives. They change the way you think about yourself. Like, when people tell me that what I have to say is valuable, then I value what I have to say. And then I actually say it, which is really important, especially when you're preaching. So, the next story was, how much time do I have? The next story was a whiteboard coaching story. Paul Manwaring works at the church where my school was, and he does counseling and kind of like dream like guidance for pursuing your destiny or your dreams or whatever. And so he had this exercise that he did with a whiteboard where he would ask the person, a random person, tell me your life story briefly, and then you'd write everything down, and like, what do you like, what are your passions, what do you hate, what are you afraid of, what do you enjoy doing? And he compiles all this information, and from it he pulls 3 things together, like what you're good at, what you can make money at, and what you like to do. So he tries to converge those 3 things in your life and like write down, this is your like career, your destiny, like this is what you're good at, and you can make money. And so he tries to converge those 3 things. And he encouraged us, because we had a booklet that outlined the questions that he had, he encouraged us to do that with another student because he didn't have time to do everyone on stage. So I asked Eva from my small group if she would do that with me, and she really wanted to, so we decided to do that. And the day that we were deciding to do that, Paul Manwaring was speaking. It was later in the week, and Eva and I were sitting by each other, and I asked her if she'd want to do this whiteboard coaching, and we agreed to do that. But while Paul Manwaring was speaking that time, he was talking about 3 different kinds of people, Renaissance people, revivalist people, and Reformation people. And the Renaissance people, this is the only one I remember because it applied to me. The Renaissance people were the creative people, like the ones that didn't fit in like the other boxes or like the other categories that he had. So creative people were the ones that aren't usually traditionally viewed as church people, like the ones that are into the arts and into all the creative outlets, like media and everything. And that applied to me. That was the only one that applied to me of the 3. And he gave what each of those kinds of people needed to be successful, like within the church or even outside the church. And what the creative people needed to be successful was permission, because usually creative people, like the starving artists, like they're not encouraged to do what they want to do because it doesn't make money, it's not practical, it's not what people need, it's not a necessary thing. And so Eve and I were doing the coaching thing, and I did her first because I wanted to. And hers was really easy. She is from Austria. She does hairstyling and is a makeup artist. And she's really good at it, and she loves to do it, and she can make money at it. So that was super obvious. She thought it was great. And so we did her first, and then we did me. And honestly, I didn't expect to get anything out of it, because I've always wanted to be a writer, but I've never pursued it. I mean, I pursued it for a while. I used to write for an hour a day for a few years, but I gave up on it because I got tired of doing it, and I actually took 1 month off, and it turned into 2 years. That happens sometimes. And so I had disqualified myself from being a writer because I hadn't pursued it for so long. And so I wasn't even going to mention it unless it specifically came up in the questions. I was not going to answer anything that she asked me. So we went through all the questions. Writing didn't really come up, like maybe a little bit, but not much. And we got to the end, and there were a couple options that I could have chosen that kind of converged, but I came down more to a simple decision rather than a clear answer. So I decided, looking at what Eva had put down, and knowing that God had actually told me I'm going to be a writer, like it was a prophetic word, not given by anyone else, but just given by God. And it was in my heart to do it, even though I didn't feel at all inspired that year. And so I hadn't mentioned it at all, and so it came down to a final decision. And so I told Eva, well, Eva, I could do this or that on the list, but I don't actually picture myself doing that for the rest of my life. And then I told her that I'm called to be a writer, and that's what I want to do the most. And so she actually got really excited, like her eyes lit up, and she was so excited. She was putting out, oh, this applies to that, and like journaling and like storytelling and all these other things that I'd written down for the answers. They all applied to my writing. And she had never written a thing I wrote, but she said, I just know you'll be perfect at it. She was like that. She was very enthusiastic and bubbly. And so, and she started just saying that you'll be great at that, like, that is what you're called to do, like all of these things apply to that in your life. And as soon as she was saying that, like how great I would be at it, even though she didn't know anything that I'd written, it gave me permission. Like I suddenly remember what Paul Manwaring had been speaking about. And Eva had given me permission because I had disqualified myself from pursuing that dream, because I always thought that if you know what you want and you really do want it, then you should just pursue it and be passionate about it and like put in all the time that you need to pursue that. And so I knew that was the thing, and I used that to motivate me. I was like, well, if I want this, I have to work really hard and like actually work for it. So I would use that as a motivator. But as soon as it stopped motivating me and I took that month off, which turned into 2 years, like that same thing, that same thought that had motivated me now disqualified me because I wasn't pursuing it. So I guess I don't deserve to do that, and that's not what I'm called to do. So I disqualified myself, but in that moment, Eva told me that I would be great and that she gave me permission. And at the same time, Eva was giving me permission, I heard God was giving me permission to pursue what I wanted to do, like what He'd placed in my heart. I'm crying too much. Okay. So God cares about our dreams. One of the things that I was surprised, I don't know why I was surprised, because if you'd asked me, I would have given the right answer. But I was surprised that God actually wants to invest in our dreams, not just the things that apply to ministry or to changing the world or to the church, but He actually wants to invest in our dreams, the things that don't have a lot of eternal value. Like the things where we want to be a writer, He wants to pour into that. Like, I'm not even going to be writing Christian books. I'm just writing fictional novels. And God wants to invest in me in that, even if it doesn't mention Him in a single book. Like, He wants to invest in that. So God cares about our dreams. He doesn't just want us. He doesn't just invest in the things that He is interested in. When we are interested in something, He takes an interest in it just because He loves us. Okay, so as you can tell by looking at me, I get a lot of compliments. And I'm really good at receiving compliments. That's been something I've just been really good at my whole life, like receiving them humbly, like not saying, oh yes, I'm just as beautiful as you say I am, but more. Like, or saying, like, what so many people, when I give them compliments, they're like, just this morning, I gave my mom a compliment, and she, like, listed all the things that she didn't like about what I just complimented her on. And I was like, Mom, I just gave you a compliment, and now you're going to tell me all the things that you don't like about it? And so I see that a lot. Either people will take a compliment and, like, think they're better than what the person said, or they'll think they're lower than what the person said. But I'm usually, like, right in the middle, like, yes, I'm a wonderful person, thank you. And so I'm usually right in the middle, and I think I receive compliments really well. But during school, I accidentally volunteered to preach in my revival group. And speaking in front of people is not my favorite thing, so they were just asking a question like, who feels like they're not good at preaching? And everyone else in the room knew that it was a trick question. I was the only one being super honest. I put up my hand. And so I was suddenly volunteered to preach for 2 minutes on any topic. And I knew I could either, everyone else who had taken a challenge, because we were often challenged in our revival group class of 60 people to do things that we didn't want to do. And I knew that I could either stand by my chair like everyone else had done and just like either prophesy or whatever they were challenged to do, or I could at least pretend I was confident. So I decided to do that. I pretended I was confident and strode right to the middle of the room and like spoke to everyone because they were all on 4 sides. So I just turned around and speak to them and preached for 2 minutes. And at the very end, I had shared a vision, which I think was the highlight of my little preach. I shared a vision that I'd had just a couple weeks ago, which wasn't super, super significant to me, but I liked it, so I shared it. And then everyone in the revival group stood up and clapped for me. And I was so surprised because I was super nervous. Surely they could tell I was nervous and wasn't good at this. But they all applauded me. And instead of receiving the applause and like taking it like a good compliment, I kind of like ducked in and sat back in my seat and pretended it never happened. And then it was later that week, I think a couple days later, I was at my city service, which they have us do something practical once a week to like use what we're learning. And my practical thing was to haul mulch up a big mountain and mulch the mountain in this park in the city. That was my job. So we were doing that, and they had us taking them up in really big garbage cans and dragging it up the side of this little mountain and then pouring mulch on the top and smoothing it out and going back down and doing it all again. And I have worked with my family renovating our house several times, and it's always the children's job to be like the mules, like to carry everything in and put it in the house. So take it from the yard, put it all in the house. That is our job, because we don't know how to do anything else. So I have done this a lot, and I guess the people with me had not renovated their own houses 3 or 4 times. So I'd suggested, well, we also had these like smaller buckets, like, what are they, 5 gallon? I don't know, the smaller ones. And I said, well, why don't we just take the smaller buckets, fill them with mulch, and then form an assembly line, so we just pass it along up to the top, dump it, pass it back down, do that instead of walking up the mountain like 2 people with a huge garbage can half full of mulch. Let's just do that instead. So I suggested that to the leader of the thing that we were doing, and they were really impressed. They're like, oh, I've never thought of that. That's a great idea. So they implemented it right away, and one of the second-year overseers, his name was John. I'll have another story about him later, but he really, really liked it, and he pointed out that that was a really great idea, and we just like to honor Michelle, and so he made everyone clap for me. That was the second time in a week I'd been clapped for in my entire life, and I... Number 3, I'm doing really well, and so I was, as they were clapping, I thought, God, this must be you. What are you teaching me? And so I was having a conversation with God, I think, later, and he was telling me that I am preparing you to receive bigger compliments, because you can't just stay where you were, but I'm going to actually use you because you have been humble and have accepted things well before. I'm going to give you bigger and bigger compliments and bigger responsibilities, and I need you to handle it and not just pretend it didn't happen or to say, no, I don't deserve that much applause, but to actually accept it with humility and to just continue on. So God prepares us beforehand, like all the time. If you ever come up against something that you feel you're not at all prepared for, it's probably because you haven't been listening to God or paying attention to the lessons he's trying to instill in you. Because all the time, I've found this multiple times over my life, that he prepares you for things. So I had preached in a revival group, and I had shared that vision. And my revival group pastor, she loved it. She thought that was really cool, and she wished we'd like stood for a minute and just like had that soak in instead of me just sitting back in my seat and carrying on. So she decided that she was going to have me share it again in front of the school. So before I had preached just a little bit in front of 60 people, and now she wanted me to preach, well, not preach, but like share just the vision in front of 1,000 people. So I was like, so I didn't know this at the time, but it was her day to lead. Like the revival group pastors rotated and they would have to be like the announcer for the day, like announce everything and introduce speakers. And so it was her turn that day, and they always have worship. People can go up to the front for worship, and it's always crowded and super loud up there, so I don't go. But today I felt like, well, I feel like going up to the front today. And they always tell you to mix it up, so I decided I'll just do that. So I went up to the front, and I was about maybe 10, 15 feet away from my revival group pastor, who was talking to an intern beside the stage just before she was going to go up and close off the worship service. And I just knew, looking at her, I just knew she was going to ask me to share that vision. She didn't speak to me at all beforehand about it, but I just knew she's going to ask me. And like, I never go up to the front for worship, so I knew, God, this is you. Why are you doing this to me again? Like, it was the same week. And so I just knew she was going to ask me. And sure enough, like 10 seconds later, she calls me over. I'm like, I know she's going to ask me, so I'm just going to say yes, no matter how I feel. So she asked me. I said yes. I shared the vision on stage. The lights were really bright, so I couldn't even see anyone. It was great. Not like here. I can see you all. And so God prepares us before we do something. He'll usually either prepare it, like he made me preach in revival group. But before I'd ever preached in revival group, we were supposed to it was that same week that we were supposed to prepare a sermon for our small group. I was the small group leader, so it was my job to prepare a sermon. And that was before I accidentally volunteered. So before that, I already had something prepared in mind that I could share. Usually my biggest problem with speaking is that I have nothing to share. So I already had something to share, and then he made me share it. And then he put me in front of all these people, and he just prepares us. He takes us from small steps into big things. Like, most people are after the big dream. Like, they want to be the actress on the stage in the biggest movie, and that's where they want to be right now. But without practice, without the smaller parts, without pursuing your dream and taking the small steps, you'll never get to the big moment with the lights and the camera and the action. So God is preparing all of you right now. I just know it, that he's preparing you for greater things than what you're expecting. Because he doesn't only just want to prepare you for things that you're doing, but he wants to prepare you for things beyond what you are expecting, beyond what you are imagining for yourself. Like, he has a bigger opinion of you than you do. So, okay, I'm good on time. Okay, the annual Woman's Blessing is the next story I want to share. So I had just fallen off my bike, and I scraped myself up pretty bad in 3 places. I was quite injured. My housemates were very concerned. But the reason I had been biking home so fast from meeting a friend was that I wanted to catch a ride to the event that was going on that night. It was called the Annual Woman's Blessing, and it was held by all the second-year students for us first-year students, where they just set up prophetic booths where they would prophesy over us, like through art or through dance or just through words. And I really wanted to go to that because who doesn't want to be blessed for free? And there were also cookies and stuff, so it was good. And so the reason I was rushing home was for that. And so I changed into a dress that didn't touch anywhere where I'd been injured. And we went to the Annual Women's Blessing. And halfway through, because all it was long, long lines of first-year students and just a few second-year students in each booth, going through everyone and taking forever. And so I was really tired. And people kept touching my shoulder where I had just injured myself without realizing it. And so it was hurting. And I was tired, and I was like, maybe I shouldn't have come. Maybe I should have just rested. Because that was like the worst injury I've had since I was crashed into a bush on my bike when I was 10. So I was getting really tired and sick of people touching my shoulder and standing in line. And the night was almost over. So then I finally saw that there was a father's blessing where they had second-year older men praying blessings over the young ladies that were all there. And I really wanted to go to that. And I saw it, and I spotted out the two of the people that I wanted to get father's blessings from. But the end of the night was almost there. The line was all the way around the room because everyone wanted a father's blessing. And so I decided, I won't have time, even if I stand in line. So I got in line next to that line for a different thing, and I decided that's what I'd do. And then John, who was overseeing my city service, he's like a father figure to like everyone he sees, and he was sitting in the chair, and while I was in line over here, across from that line, and he saw me, and he was blessing some other girl, and when he saw me, he just about got out of his chair and stopped praying for this one girl to run over to me, and because he liked me, because he thought I was a great spiritual daughter. And so he almost got out of his chair, and then he stopped and finished praying for the girl quickly, and then he walked over to me, and he told me, why are you in line for this? I want to pray for you. And I was like, well, the line's too long, and blah, blah, blah. So he said, don't you realize that you have pull with me, girl? So he went and he told me, just sneak over here, and as soon as I'm done with the next person, I'll put you in the chair, and then I'll pray for you. And so, okay. So I finished getting the blessing that I was in line for, and then ran over behind his chair and just kind of stood there kind of guiltily, like, I'm totally cutting in line right now. And I don't do that. I'm a nice girl. So I was just standing there behind his chair and waiting for him to pray for me. And as soon as he was done with that girl, I tapped him on the shoulder, and then he prayed a blessing over me. And he's like my mom. He just goes on and on about how great I am. And except it's always like prophetic. Like everything he said that comes out of his mouth is a prophetic or an encouraging word. So he's just like going on and on. And then even through worship, there was worship after, and we just kept talking. And after about 5 minutes of him going on straight about how wonderful I am, I'm like, okay, that's enough. Let me tell you how wonderful you are now. So I just tell him all the obvious things about his Father's heart, and super obvious to me. And he tells me after I'm done sharing with him about how great he is, he says, everything that I said has been previously prophesied over him, and that I'm just confirming like everything that God has been speaking to him through other people like over the last year or two. And that was really encouraging, because like, yes, I got one. And so what I got from that, like every time I have an experience with God or he shows me something, I try to pull from that like who he is. Like every story that God has given you, every testimony is meant not just, oh, that was a great moment for you, or that was really good, God be glorified, but it's actually like, this is who God is, this is his character, this is what he thinks about you, and because God is this great God, he's made you, that you're great too. And so every story that I'm sharing, you can pull from it different things that God is, like how he loves us, like what his character is like, how he's totally biased about you. And so from this blessing story, when I was at the annual women's blessing, like God told me later that the way that John, he totally gave you permission to cut in line, like that's the way that God is when he's dealing with us. Like he wants us to get blessed by him. He wants to bless us, and he doesn't want us to wait in line or to wait our turn, but he says, you have pull with me, you have favor with me. I want you to come and get blessed now. It doesn't matter that there's a line of other people waiting and asking and praying. Like, I want to bless you. Okay, I have 3 minutes. But I only have one more story. This is great. Okay, so the last story was dance is something that I've always loved, but I've never had money to pursue it. My parents have never had money to pursue it for me. So it's always just been something, I love to dance, but I've never been able to invest in it or have dance classes or anything. So while I was there, they had a free dance class every morning before school, once a week morning before school. And so I would go to that the whole time. And then halfway through, one of my dance friends from the class told me about this amazing dance teacher, Anna. And she said that we could go to her class. The first 2 classes are free, so I did the first 2 classes. And then after that, the guy behind the counter at the dance studio asked, well, do you want to pay for some more dance classes? And I was like, well, no, actually, the only reason I came was because the first ones were free, and I really loved them because they had a ballet and a contemporary class, and for beginners, which is what I am. And I really wanted to keep going, but it wasn't in the budget. Like, I have money, but I need it. So I told him, well, I'm sorry, it's not in the budget, or else I would totally pay for all the dance classes I can possibly get. So we had a board in the house where I was staying. We had a board that says, believe in God for, and then you put down how much money you want. And so I put down $15. That's for one dance class. So I put down $15 on my little slot on the board, and I waited, because usually, actually, it's 2 weeks. 2 weeks after I want the money, that's usually when God gives it to me. I don't know why. It's always like 2 weeks after. So I put that on the board, and I waited. And about 2 weeks after that, I randomly got a card from my grandmother, and it wasn't my birthday or anything, and there was $50 in it. She never gives me $50. So I had the $50, and I just knew, God, this must be you. I'm going to put it in dance class, all of it. So I put it all into dance class, and I bought more classes, and so I got to keep going, which was really nice. And it was I think it was like the last month of school, our revival group, they had pooled money together, like taken an offering to be given out to other students in the revival group whenever God wanted them to give money to anyone. And we were all poor students. Like, every time they asked me, how many people need a financial breakthrough? Every hand in the room would go up. So we took this collection, and some months before, and then 6 of us this day were called up in revival group, and we were asked to prophesy over each other, which was a normal thing. So we all did that. And then they came up with envelopes, and there was money in them. And so they just gave us, all 6 of us, envelopes. And like, I'm never called up for financial things because I was like the only one who had prepared. The entire class, I was the only one. So I had money for things. And so I wasn't expecting to ever get any money from the offering because that was more for people that needed it. But they came up and they gave each of us envelopes full of money. And mine, as the intern gave me mine, he told me that yours was the only one that we felt had a specific purpose for, like the only one that we wanted you to spend it in a certain way. And he said that we want you to put all of yours towards dance class. And so what I learned from that was that God, he doesn't just want to fuel things like writing, like things that are actually like a career where you can get money from it. He actually wants to fuel our dreams and invest in us when it doesn't actually matter. Like dance is not something that I'm going to be, like a career that I'm going to be doing, but it's just something that I really enjoyed. And he wants to invest in us and he just values the things that we value. And he just wants to bless us in the way that the things that we want to invest in, he wants to invest in through us. So that was my last story. But before I close, there's one more breakthrough story that I have to tell. And it was at the very beginning of the year in our binder full of our school information. They had our name on a little note, and then they wrote a little prophetic word for the year. So this was like the first day of school at registration. And what they wrote on mine was they wrote Michelle King. And they gave me the word brave. This is your year to excel. What you never thought you would do, you will do with ease. That was the prophetic word that they gave me. And I just want to say that today, that prophetic word is fulfilled because this is scary and I did it. So that's all I have to say. Thank you for listening.
You know, a friend once told me, and I actually found it kind of surprising, that a lot of people don't understand that they're welcome at church. Some people, he said, have the idea that church is like a club where you should be a member before you attend things. Well, we want you to know it's not like that, and we would love it if you could join us at Living Hope. We're on the corner of King and Kensington. We have services Sunday morning. You can check our website or check the newspaper for our service times. We'd love to have you come. Apart from that, though, we're glad that you are with us and hope that you'll join us again.